welcome to Feminist Question Time, brought to you by Women's Declaration International, the leading feminist organisation, global organisation promoting women's sex-based rights and defending women's sex-based rights against the threats posed by gender identity ideology. There's more information on the website womensdeclaration.com, where you will find our declaration on women's sex-based rights, which has been signed by 36,053 people from 160 countries and is supported by 510 organisations from all over the world. We have many volunteer activists, including country contacts from every continent, engaged in defending women's rights, and would be really grateful if you could join us as a volunteer. Today, we're going to hear from Vaishnavi Sundar from India. Vaishnavi's talk is going to be Behind the Looking Glass, an upcoming film on the lives of trans widows. And we've got a clip to show, and then we're going to talk to her, and Vaishnavi's going to talk about the film and the progress towards it and how you can support it. Then we're going to hear from Donna Krasniqi from Austria. She organised the Let Women Speak meeting in Vienna. She's going to talk about how to organise a meeting, how the logistics of getting a meeting like that sorted out. And so hopefully that will inspire others to do these sort of meetings, and also a bit about background. So it would be just great to hear from her. Then we're going to hear from Beatrice, who is the chair of the WDI, Women's Declaration International Legal Committee, and a lawyer, and she's going to talk about issues with the UN Endorsed 8th of March principles and the WDI legal response. So that's going to be very interesting. And then we're going to hear from Zan Dalio, who's launching on behalf of WDI a Why Did I Sign the Declaration campaign. We've sent out some information about it, but it's asking signatories of the declaration to explain why they've signed, and that's going incredibly well and really nice. We're going to start off, first of all, with Vaishnavi. Vaishnavi is the WDI country contact for India and publishes amazing articles, and also the fantastic film that you published last year. And there's now coming up a new film, Behind the Looking Glass, which is going to be about the lives of trans widows. Vaishnavi, will you tell us a little bit about it, and then the clip you've got from it? I've got it ready.
So like you said, the title is Behind the Looking Glass. It's a feature-length documentary about the lives of trans widows. Trans widows are women who have taken up this terminology for themselves, whose husbands or partners have quote-unquote transitioned. So we hear so much about the stunning and brave stories of these husbands. You see them in all newspapers. You see them being celebrated on Mother's Day. You see them in newspapers on Women's Day, but you hear very little about the women that are married to these men. And even as idle curiosity, you don't hear about the women that are resisting said transition. You hear about the women who have completely agreed to it, are calling themselves lesbians right now. They are probably popular because they are aligning themselves with the ideology completely. So you hear so much about the women that are saying that they are now lesbians. Utterly bizarre things that you hear about the wife, but not the stories of wives who are saying no to this, who are saying that they are not lesbians and that they did not marry a woman, and that they want to either stay married with the man that they married in the beginning, or just end this whole circus, so to speak. So my film is documenting stories of 18 women from around the world. And though I would have really liked it if I had stories of women from India as well, but we are far away from that because we don't have that vocabulary, one, and because of all our languages and everything, it's very difficult for women to come up with compiling their emotions and experiences in a way that can be understood globally. Because right now, there is also the social culture phenomenon where there are these communities called kotis within the Hijra community, where it has been known for many, many years, decades even, where there are men who have families, children, and things like that. But they also have this double life where they cross-dress and they probably solicit at night, perform sex work, quote unquote. So this has been going on. Now, any resistance to that, it's going to be questioning the very cultural phenomenon that has been going on in India, like challenging Indian culture itself or something like that. So it's going to be a long time before women are gathering their courage, and also to have like the vocabulary to speak out about all of these things. But I will kind of draw a broad sort of understanding about the status of women in India right now, because many women are able to seek divorce on the basis of the fact that their adult partners seeking sexual reassignment surgery. So the court is granting them divorce on that basis, not because they are concerned for women, not because they think it's the right thing to do, but because they no longer consider this as a valid married institution, right? Because that man has transitioned and become a woman. And there are so many other horrible things that are going on that you never hear about because it's not advertised as such. Like self-ID is legal here. Adult men, intact males can self-declare themselves to be female and can get F marker on their passports if they wanted to, because there is a legal precedent. Somebody has already done it. So every high court sort of just basically citing that as an example and seeking the same thing for their respective passports as well. So it's all extremely dangerous situation. And as you know, when things get really bad, it is the global south that is going to be paying the price for it a lot longer, because the West would have moved on and found something else to fight for. But the ramifications of things that are going on in the global south is going to last a lot longer. And probably women are going to be utterly confused because they won't even know what has hit them.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely horrifying. I mean, I'm really interested in knowing how's the government and how's Modi reacting to this? It just seems like, yeah. I mean, does he ever talk about it?
You would never hear any politician talk about this at all. You wouldn't have anyone make a public statement about this, but silently what's going on is they're all just affirming, because it is under Modi rule that we have something called SMILE. It's an acronym. It's basically like a facility that is created by the state to provide some sort of a financial or a recourse for marginalized communities. So within that, there are now homes that are set up in different states called it's like a Garima Greh. Basically, it's like a home where if you run away from your house, if you want a place to stay, you can go there. It's exclusively for trans-identified, male and female, but it's exclusively for trans-identified people. And the government is providing 5 lakhs rupees as insurance if you want to get, surgeries and things. And if you go to any state hospital, it is free. So to me, and also parallelly, gay marriage hasn't been legalized yet. So to me, this is basically quietly just transing the gay away, right? Because why are you holding on to one community's freedom to marry while quietly just providing everything to this other community that is basically not even part of, the civil rights movement, so to speak, in India. So basically anything that is provided by the government, the trans community is seeking that for itself. And they're claiming that on the mere fact that they are also a marginalized community. There is no other basis for it other than that. So Modi does not make a statement. Nobody will make a statement. And also it's the union government, right? Each state has its own state-based laws as well. So there are some states that are more woke than the rest. Unfortunately, Tamil Nadu, the state that I belong to, is kind of liberal, has always been liberal. So they are providing a lot of schemes. Trans-identified males can now travel in female-only buses and things like that. So yeah, so many things are happening, but you will not hear a politician make statements like that. Although there are MLAs and MPs who will make statements that write newspaper articles that we need to provide schemes and other things for trans-identified males because trans women are women and they're marginalized, etc., etc. And also there is a huge overlap between caste and trans identification in India as well, because most of these the members of the Hijra community come from a marginalized caste. So it is very easy for anybody to look at that and think that it's a very important cause to fight for because they are from an oppressed caste and you need to, help them come away from it, etc. But that has got nothing to do with identifying as the opposite sex at all. But it's very difficult to get through to them because they immediately call you as somebody who's supporting the caste system itself, which is not true. So they've sort of made it impossible for anybody to put forward sex-based rights as an agenda because they have all of these other systems in check. They can easily call you things like the turf or, and caste. I'm considered to be an upper caste, right? So they look at me, if I say anything, they'll roll their eyes and they'll go, of course, it makes sense you will say that because you don't care about the caste system and how it is affecting people. Things like that.
Yeah. And you're just oppressing people. It's absolutely horrific. And it looks as if it's jumped a long way ahead. So this is the future. This is the future that we're very scared of. And it's been implemented without the lesbian and gay rights bit of the 30 years of liberation. It's just gone straight there to the horrors. And it's chaotic as well. So like you say, it's very difficult to resist it.
In the Supreme Court conversation where the petitions were being heard for same-sex marriages, I was cringing so much because every lawyer that put forth a petition is talking about trans rights and talking about non-binary and using terminologies like assigned male at birth and all of those terminologies that have no legal basis whatsoever, and they are schooling the judges, explaining to them how this is how the future is and etc. It's very complicated because pertaining to my film right now, they are saying that trans-identified males marrying a female is now a gay rights issue, which is not. It is not. It's just straight couple, right? So there is no concept of biological sex in this whole discussion, and that is a scary thing, especially in a country where you have rapes happening every minute, probably, and all other forms of sexual violence that women have to go through from the time they are born. There are villages in India still where you can't check the sex while the baby is still inside the mother's body, but because it is illegal, because there have been cases of female feticide and things. But now, even in some places, once a child is born, if it is female, there are customs where you go to a certain old lady who can poison the child because it is female. This is still happening now, and they are conveniently ignoring the importance of sex.
Hello, my name is Vaishnavi Sundar, and I'm a filmmaker from Chennai, India. I have been making films since 2013, and all my work is about the lives and experiences of women. I have taught myself to make films over the years, and I now write, direct, produce, and edit all my films, learning new things every day. Some of you may know me as the creator of Dysphoric, the 4-part documentary series on the rise of gender identity ideology and its effects on women and girls. Thank you to everyone who watched, shared, and supported the film. I am now in the process of making my next project, and it is called Behind the Looking Glass. In this film, I'm documenting the stories of women whose partners or husbands transitioned. I've spoken with nearly 40 women, of which 18 stories will be part of the film. These are women from all over the world, because this phenomenon, much as the ideologues would have you believe, is not rare. The film will feature stories of women from Japan, Australia, Germany, and many others. And I will include the latest developments in India, where a growing number of adult males are seeking surgeries, and the courts are considering it as a valid reason for divorce. Unfortunately, though, given the population and diversity of languages, Indian women are yet to log their experiences using the vocabulary that is universally understood. But I regret, South Asia is soon going to be engulfed by it. Filmmaking is a time-consuming job, and it is highly dependent on 2 things: building a strong, like-minded team, and of course, money. And ever since I started talking about the harms of gender identity ideology, my access to both these things have been snatched away. The more controversial I get, the lesser my chances of finding collaborators and funding. Suffice to say, it is a lonely and exhausting job to take on several aspects of filmmaking all by myself. But with the help of a very small team and the feminist support from women world over, I hope I will execute this project just like I did Dysphoric. But I need your help. MACS, Male Allies Challenging Sexism, is a group of pro-feminist men challenging male violence against women in all its forms through events, actions, and activism. They have come forward to collaborate with me on this project as a fundraising partner. Considering how much work women-led feminist groups take on, It is good that MACs have stepped in to pull the weight. While women donate so generously towards this fight, I hope MACs will be able to persuade men too to come forward and support projects like mine. 100% of funds donated via MACs go into making the film, and you can donate as little or as much as you can. Another way to support my film involves owning some pretty fabulous merchandise. Women's Rights Network and Violet Wind have introduced a new line called Fearless Female on their merch store to raise funds for Behind the Looking Glass. You can choose from a long list of things like t-shirts, hoodies, water bottles, mugs, tote bags, phone cases, and such. Every time you buy from the store, 75% of the proceeds go into the film. Now you get to own something pretty amazing while also contributing to making a very important documentary. We are building 8 characters from scratch who have to remain anonymous due to possible dangers from their ex-partners. So your donation will help me bring those characters to life. Your donation will also help me with the huge expenditure towards post-production. As many of you know, I try to always work with an all-female crew. So by supporting this film, you are in turn supporting all the women in the crew. Behind the Looking Glass, in all likelihood, is the first ever documentary made on this subject. And together, we can create a historic piece of film that will remain on the internet for posterity. Please donate now.
Anyone who's experiencing abuse or infidelity, it's not getting better.
Get out. Get yourself out of this.
Do not allow yourself to be persuaded or influenced by blandishments and manipulative arguments.
Try to extricate yourself. Figure out the finances.
There's nothing you can be or do that will make you the object of his affection. He is the object of his affection.
It's like my dad died when I was 11, but I didn't realise. And I've been mourning him for 40 years.
On the left, it's axiomatic that the untold stories will be told. This particular untold story, no one wants to hear.
私たちのような存在に対して何があっても好き好んで一緒にいたんだから合意の上でしょと考える人もいて、そんなことでは相手を無罪にさせられかねないから嫌なんです。
In a marriage where your partner started to use drugs or cheated on you, you would find therapists, support groups, and other women who would say, this is not your fault. But on this topic, people are very quick to question whether or not you responded to it correctly.
Because a lot of what we're describing is familiar patterns of domestic abuse. And it's quite a big leap for people to make from hearing the stunning and brave story with the woman who goes along with it to hearing our story, the woman who talks about how she's been abused. It's hardly covered at all.
When it comes to newspapers and what sells newspapers and what gets clicks, I think a man standing there in stilettos with fake breasts is obviously going to get more clicks, more attention and sell more papers than the abused wife in the background.
One narrative gets all the airtime and the other one just has to be silenced. And that's the woman who's saying, well, he hit me, he raped me. He spent all our money, he was terrible to the children. No, that's now a woman, best sort of woman, the trans woman, and she just has to shut up.
Women are finding us by Googling trans widows. What's been really surprising from looking at the website traffic is just geographically where a lot of these women are. Countries like Russia, Japan, and Saudi Arabia, if we're going through it here and we're being silenced, how much worse must it be for all of those women in cultures where women don't have a voice at all?
Because I think it happens in all cultures, in all religions, in all societies. This is not just a thing that happens to only white, American, European people.
When AGPs are fetishising women's oppression, you have to ask yourself, is it even more likely that they're going to be fetishising it in countries where women are even more oppressed?
This man has been on this hero's journey. He's reinvented himself. He's come out like a phoenix or a butterfly or something like that. And he's now this beautiful woman. And there's this fucking bitch who is saying, no, that's not my story. This is my story too. You know, I married a man, you fathered my children, and she has to be silenced.
Ich meine, wenn man 2 Kinder geboren hat, gerade mal wenn die Kinder noch klein sind, dann ist das Sexualleben halt ein bisschen, sagen wir mal, zweitrangig. Und damit wollte er mir sozusagen, dadurch, dass ich so abwesend bin, zu ihm, in seinen Augen wahrscheinlich eher ablehnend, müsste er das ja tun. So, look what you made me do.
This might seem as though it's the end of everything for you, and it might seem as though it's the end of your life, everything you had or believed you had, but it isn't.
J.K. Rowling has like a quote that rock bottom is a great place to launch off from. That is the spot where you get to recreate and redefine what's important.
If people choose to be horrible to me and to insult me and call me names, then so be it. I will not be silent about it. Not for my sake. The damage is done to my life now, but for the sake of women everywhere who are being silenced on this subject. I'm speaking out for those people.
I cannot tell you how much happier I am now than I ever was in my marriage.
It's better on the other side. Yeah.
Thank you so much for making that. That's amazing. That is amazing. It's just a delight to see it, and I just can't wait for the whole thing to come out. I'm just worried that Matt Walsh is going to copy this and say it was his idea.
Yeah, just earlier today, I'm in a different city right now to do more animation work. That's why the purple background is missing. But I'm here because I've been so sleepless and I can't find my words right now. But there is so much that I wish to say about the Indian situation and about the film as well. But right now, I feel like I have this tunnel vision to just finish the film. Sleep doesn't matter, food doesn't matter, nothing matters, just got to finish the film. But yeah, it's true that soon after this is over, there are going to be 100 men that will still say, where are the feminists? Why haven't they done anything about it? Feminists are the reason why things have gone wrong. Like there is no electricity in my house. Feminists are to blame. No matter all the other things that are going on in life, this seems to be like the priority right now. So I am really glad that I could speak to all of you today. WDI has been absolutely supportive to everything that I have done so far. So to be able to speak about this and show this trailer to all the women that are in the webinar and later on, it means the whole world to me. So if anybody can help by sharing or donating whatever little you can, the amount really does not matter, but every little will help. If you can't afford to donate, it's perfectly okay. Please just share the trailer as widely as possible. And if there are ways in which I can spread information about this trailer, if you have a Substack, if you have a blog, if you have a podcast, if you'd like to have me over, please just write to me. I just wanted to say that the film will become available for free for everybody to watch soon after it is done, as usual with all my films. That's why it's even more important that we all make this possible to be made. And it's an all-female crew, like I said in the video. It's important also because in the Global South, it seems like I'm always a little bit ahead in terms of getting this information out. Like a lot of people that are watching it or even knowing about gender identity disorder, gender dysphoria and things like that, haven't heard about this issue as much as the rest of the world has. So if you talk to common people, it seems like it is going to take them another 5 years before they realize how serious the issue is. So I think it's even more important that we have all of these resources available for those people when they are faced with a situation like this.
We're going to now go to our next panelist, who is Donna Krasniqi. So Donna is the organizer of the Vienna Let Women Speak meeting, which was last week, which was massively successful in my view. I watched the whole of it, as I bet loads of women here did. And so that Vienna is in Austria, and it was quite a good event. And you have very kindly said you'd come on and tell us about how you organised it, the before, during it, and some of the aftermath. So that would be really helpful. And bearing in mind, some of the women here might be able to copy what you've done and do it again. So if you know, even if you're just explaining how you organized it, that's really helpful for us. Okay, great. So tell us the story.
I started Speaker's Corner in copying what has been done for years now in Hyde Park by Posey Parker, Kelly J. Keane. And I just, you know, after being 2 years, I mean, I'm a feminist for 12 years now. I am in the Social Democratic Party. I work for the Vienna, I work in the Vienna Town Hall. And I've been a political campaigner or like for years now. But after being in this gender war for 2 years now, I just had enough because I thought we can't just do it on Twitter because people keep telling us that it's just 2 women, you know, with their actual names in the handle, and all the others are, I don't know, Russian bots or something, which is not true because of course, we are organizing and we have all these groups. And I know the women personally, but I also understand the reasons why these women cannot, you know, go out on Twitter with their real names and then talk about these things because of the silencing and the canceling that is going on. They're afraid to lose their jobs and being smeared. So I just thought, okay, maybe we should just take it to the streets so people see that this is just like in Great Britain, this is not just 2 women on the internet and a whole bunch of Russian bots. And we did that last year, it was 3 times, and it was okay, it was quite successful. But the situation in Austria is a little bit different than it is in Germany. In Germany, self-ID is about to come. They have the draft of the law already set. And they just, I mean, I think it's going to happen this year. They just want to pass it. So, yeah. And Switzerland, I'm talking about the German-speaking countries in Europe. Switzerland has self-ID in effect for 1.5 years now. So Austria doesn't have that. And there is not an actual draft threatening women. But the Social Democratic Party has put self-ID as its policy. So it is possible for men within the party to run as a woman for the next general election and get a woman's seat in the parliament. And yeah, this is when I started to criticize the party policy. And this is when I started, you know, to be really, really open about it with my real name and everything. And then in October, I just thought, yeah, I don't know if women in Austria feel threatened at all, or if there is enough women to talk about that. In Vienna, we are, I think, about 100 women who are aware of the topic and feminists or just, you know, mothers who are worried. We have unisex toilets in schools already, but the media is not talking about it. We have it at university, they're not talking about it. And so I thought maybe I just asked Posey Parker, and I wrote her an email in October, and she wrote me back 10 minutes later. I was completely baffled. I was like, what? Because I just wrote this, you know, the general address. And she wrote me back, yes, I will come. And this was a week before her her US tour started. And then she went to Australia, and I assume you've been following her tours all over the globe now. And then when things got really, really, really awful in New Zealand, my very good friend, Tash, who lives in Vienna, but is herself an English woman, wrote me, we cannot let this, you know, she was so mad about what happened to Posey Parker and this 70-year-old woman who had her cheekbone broken by men in New Zealand during the rally. And she was so mad about that. And she told me, Donna, I don't care. We have to go to Hyde Park. You know, we have to support these women. So she booked us the flight and we went to Hyde Park for April 30th. And on April 30th, when I was at Hyde Park, I wanted to speak, and Posey saw me and she said, I'm coming to you. And because I totally forgot about that, that I asked her and everything, because I just figured she might be just busy and she's going there and there all over the world. Vienna is not the most important place to be when it comes to the topic. And she told me, I'm coming to Vienna. And I asked her, yeah, no, I know. And she said, no, I'm coming in June. And I said, what? I mean, I didn't hear about it. So I had 6 weeks to organize, but I knew that you can organize an event in 6 weeks because I've done it in my life, many times. So I just told her, okay, that's news to me, but I can manage. And she was, I think for a second, she was worried that I can't. But of course, I knew that we can do that. And then when I got back home, I already started working. And yeah, the most important thing was, I guess, to make the police understand that this is not only controversial, but women are being threatened over these rallies. They want to silence us. They don't want to let us speak. And I had to make Vienna police understand that we really need protection, that this is not just a little, feminist rally, because they know feminist rallies, nobody's really, being having a problem with that. At least this was the case for past decades. But now people have problems with that. And I wrote this huge email to the police. And then I put, the video of the Hyde Park event with the police protection. I put in the email to make them see how good the English police are handling the situation, at least at that day in Hyde Park they did, because I know that women have had problems in Great Britain with their police protection at Posey Park.
That's such a good tip. So you sent the video of the British police saying this is how police do it. Fantastic.
Yeah, to make them, want to make them a little bit competitive about it, Yeah. So, no, but I had to put the video on YouTube, because you can't just send videos to the police because they have the big firewalls and you can just send data or media. So I had to put it on my YouTube channel and make it unlisted. So nobody else is going to see the video. It's just for police purpose. And I did send them the link. Links are allowed. So, and the whole, and I posted the whole, I told them all about it, how she was, how they threw tomato soup on her, how the mob encircled the women, how this 70-year-old woman was beaten and had her cheekbone broken and everything. And I told them that the Antifa is already has already announced their counter-protest. And then the police invited me in to a talk, and that was actually really, really nice, because there were these 5 policemen there, and they asked me, why do you think this is controversial? And I said, no, they asked me, so what is this rally about? And I said, quite frankly, we don't believe that women have penises. And the policeman said, but why is this controversial? And I said, I don't know, but we can say it, and people are getting really, really mad about it, and we don't want men to self-identify into our saunas, the stances. And he was like, no, I don't get it. Nobody's gonna have a problem with that. And then, can you imagine, there was this other policeman who told him about J.K. Rowling and what she's been through. And I looked at him and I'm like, oh my God, there's a chair with me here. And this was never have happened. And the fact that, there was another policeman and telling them about the hate women are getting for saying basic things, they believed him more, I guess, than just, a woman they'd never seen before. And then really it was no problem at all, because they told me the whole Sigmund Freud Park is going to be closed for our event. So the counter-protesters cannot stand on the park. And they told me that they're going to put up these metal fences, you know, to keep us safe. And I mean, the amount of police officers there, and it was not like in Geneva, the Robocop police officers with the water thrower, not like this threatening message. It was in the normal uniforms, but it was 100 of them, women police officers, you know, and they were standing around our fence and listening to our speeches. And I remember this policewoman like really closely listening to what we are saying. And after the event, because the event went by so nicely, we were about 100, maybe 120 women, which might be for some people not much, but I mean, as I already said, this was Austria. So the whole topic, we are always 3 or 5 years behind Germany, and Germany is 3 or 5 years behind England or America. So, you know, it's like 2014 for you guys, you know, so this is Austria. And then still it was, women came from the Netherlands, from Sweden, from Poland. We had this lesbian collective from Poland who came. We had women, we had a woman from Slovakia. We had mothers, grandmothers, we had students, young lesbians. There were so many lesbians there. And I mean, there was this very, very renowned, do you say it, lesbian documentary filmmaker in Austria. She was there. She took a lot of material from it, and she filmed the event. And I don't know if she's gonna do something with that, but I mean, just the fact that she kept it, you know, for maybe historical purposes, and she could get all the speeches in. And that was that. So when the event, after, you know, 1 hour and 50 minutes, was interrupted by, I mean, this huge storm, rain, we had to leave the venue. And I was just, you know, finally, all the responsibility from my shoulders. I was very worried about women. I know that a lot of women didn't come because they were still afraid, even though I tried to make them, you know, feel safe and tell them that I had the talk with the police. They're gonna protect us, I am sure. But of course, you can't be 100% sure that if the police is gonna keep their word, you know. So I mean, and then anyway, what happened? Yeah, maybe this is the before, and then we went to the pub, and in the pub we had fun, and it was really, really nice. I think a lot of women went out this evening. I didn't because I was exhausted, but it was such a nice experience, and I was so happy. I was so happy that it went well.
So it was just unbelievable. I watched it. I don't know if I was watching it live, but I think I probably was. I thought there were loads of really, really good speeches, and it was lovely to see. And it was also fantastic. So, and it's very lucky for us that English speakers, that so many people spoke in English. And then, but I thought that the speech from the Dutch woman who came along and said I think she was born in Somalia, maybe somewhere in East Africa, was so powerful that it was just a classically brilliant speech. So if anybody hasn't, we should try and clip it out. I mean, the whole thing was good, but that was just unbelievable. And I think that the ability for women to come along and just speak. Pretty much every one of these events has something outstanding, at least 1 or 2 or 3. So I was just blown away with it. I mean, I just thought it's one of the best things I've ever heard. So, and it's so inspiring. So it sounds as if we could all do this on our local areas, and the police are quite positive now. So you felt that was you got quite a lot of support, and were you quite pleased?
The police, after the event, all the police officer came over, and he was so nice. And he even, I mean, I was very agitated, and all my stress fell out, so I couldn't really small talk with him. But the British women being polite, spoke to him a lot. And then he was like, I mean, they had this banter where he said that, I didn't know, the English women said thank you to him, you know, this is this was exceptional. What you did, blah, blah, blah. And then he said, oh, I bet you say this to all policemen. And then they laughed, you know, and I just thought to myself, yeah, okay. You know what I mean? I was really glad, you know, that they did such a great job. And I'm very thankful. But yeah, I really think after they saw that we're really this, you know, ordinary women, you know, that they understood that there's really nothing bad about us and nothing, you know, hateful. So yeah, this was that. And about Lydia, her name is, the Dutch woman with African origins. What she said, I mean, she said so many things, and I encourage you all to watch the video. But what one thing is that she said, and you know, the UN has this, when you go at the UN site for girls' safety and health, you can read that they say that girls' toilets, you know, are a very, very big factor when you want to make girls in, you know, South Asia, Africa, go to school, because these girls don't go to the schools, even though there might be one or they build one, because they are, they have, you know, a very, very high possibility to being raped. But if you build female-only, girls-only toilets, there is a, you know, a direct, I don't know, thread to these two things. And what she said, and I think, I mean, I just love that she said that as an African woman. And she said, and it is just so stupid to think that in Europe or in the West, we can just abolish these things now, you know, just make our girls not go to their own girls only toilets when they are at school. And this was very wonderful, but she said a lot of brilliant things, other brilliant things. So please just watch her video and hear her say it in her very unique and powerful way. Yes, yeah, this was all great. So I was very relieved. I was very happy. And then the aftermath, you know, and this is where it was, I mean, this was just, the past week for me was insane. It was really insane. And I've been through shitstorms, so I can manage it. And I know that it is good to, after some days of being in a shitstorm on Twitter or in a media shitstorm, it is necessary to just take your time off and be offline, you know, because yeah, it really is not that good for the stress level. What happened after, maybe I can say it quickly. So there was one thing, there was this incident, and I have to tell you that. On Sunday after the event, a woman posted the link to the live stream on Twitter, and under the link, a local parliament, you know, parliament shareholder of the Greens, a trans-identified man, posted P99 under the live stream of this woman on Twitter. And P99 is a German gun, the Walter P99. And if you Google P99, only the gun shows up. There's no Urban Dictionary other code for it. It's just the gun. So I consider that a death threat, and I spoke about it, and this got a lot of, you know, international reach, and a lot of women, you know, feminist, gender critical women shared my concerns about that. So on Monday, this guy resigned from his post, but none of the Green Party politicians spoke about that. None of my party politicians spoke about that. And normally they do that with everything, you know, just to make sure and to send a message to the women attending my event that under no circumstances is violence against women or threatening violence or murder against women okay, because women now are worried, even more worried to go to the event. And I needed just one politician to say, hey, this is not okay in a democracy. You can't just go around and tell women, you know, you get my gun, you get the bullet for going to the event. And this is something that really disappointed me, really disappointed me, because up until now, I just thought, you know, that they just don't care about us. But it's not just that. I mean, they just wouldn't look at us, even though we are directly threatened. And then, so this was that. And on Tuesday, and I thought on Tuesday, because 3 days after, I mean, I thought that nobody's going to speak about that again, because it's old news, you know. But on Tuesday, this feminist journalist, Beate Hausbichler, her name, a liberal feminist, I can only assume, because, you know, she's pro-sex work and anything pro, you know, because everything is about the, I don't know, women's choice. And if a woman chooses, yeah, so everything is possible, even affirming men's fetishes. When the woman says yes, it's feminist. And so what she did is write this huge analysis about the event. And she did the same thing about the New Zealand event in April, but she did it again, and she did put in the same lies and defamations. And the interesting fact, because she fancies herself an actual journalist, she works for the women's department within this, I mean, newspaper. It's not just a little newspaper. It's like one of the bigger newspapers in Austria. It's Der Standard, and she works there in the women's department. And she wasn't even at the event, so she wasn't even there. And she made this analysis about it, you know. So I don't know if that's considered journalism, but she can, of course, she can do whatever she wants. And she shared my employer. And 4 hours later, because it wasn't enough, smearing women, she did another article with another journalist on the event, just the same thing, you know, 4 hours later, again, but now with my name and with my employer again. So she kind of doxed me, because I don't have my employer anywhere on social media when I speak, you know, about women's rights. But she did that. And the next day, this other newspaper, Profil, called my employer and wanted a statement whether or not, you know, my employer thinks has my worldview of, you know, which is that women don't have penises. So this was really insane. And then I called them out for that, and I said, is it normal, you know, in a democracy to go around like Stasi and call women's rally organizers employers? Why? This was not my employer's event. I didn't do it within hours, you know. And then, yeah, this was another shitstorm, and I can tell you. But now it's ebbed up a little, you know. It's like calming down, and I really hope that they're gonna leave me alone. But it was insane. Yeah, the past what maybe to end. As a final statement, what really worried me was that the women watching it, because I had a lot of support. They wrote me, you know, mothers. I've never been in contact before. Wrote me on Twitter that they share the same the same worries, and they and now that they see what happens to you, that the journalists call your employer or dox your employer. They are even more worried and cannot come to my events and things like that. And so I put out this statement on Twitter where I told the women, and something that Posey Parker said in a live stream, in a Twitter space 2 weeks ago. And I said, yeah, it's hard. It is really intense. And without the support, you know, of my partner and my son, support of my son. My son is very little, but, you know, he's being funny without purpose. So that makes me happy. Without a support system, you know, it can get really tough, but I am okay. Really, I don't care, you know. Now 2 days after, I kind of emotionally forgot about it, you know, what happened. But, and this is the most important thing, the price for resistance is only going to get higher. And this is the part that Posey spoke about too. if we are being, I mean, they try to silence, but if we stay silent, if we don't go to these events and show up, they are going to make it even harder for us to do so. You know, it's not going to get easier. And the other fact why it's important to still go is because, well, I mean, when is it enough? Does it have to be my niece in 5 years or 10 who gets her breasts cut? You know, it really needs to be done now, so our nieces and daughters and sisters don't have to do it, you know, in 10 years or 20. And yeah, a lot of women said, yeah, no, now they're agitated. That's right. We really need to stay on the message and keep talking about it.
So Beatrice is the chair of the WDI Legal Committee. She has a background in international law and human rights, works on various issues relating to sexual violence against women, particularly effective prosecution. She's currently working on a campaign to verify the claimed existence of help centres in India for victims of domestic and sexual violence. And this talk today is going to be about issues with the UN Endorsed 8th of March principles and the WDI legal response.
Today I'm here mainly as representative of the legal committee and coordinating our activities there. So many of you would have seen the publication of the WDI legal response, or rather the 8 March principles that the ICJ introduced with a lot of fanfare. So one thing to first say is that while the ICJ, the International Commission of Jurists, they are not an international body, they are, however, a very significant non-governmental organization. And I actually worked there once. So there's a lot of, I think most of us go through this, where organizations that we once looked up to and worked for are now doing, pulling this kind of, well, trick. So
I'm just really sorry because I've just managed to stop your screen sharing. So if you could put it on again, that would be brilliant.
Okay, 1 second.
Sorry about that.
No problem. Let me just. 1 second.
Oh, it was so perfect, and then I've messed this up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. No worries at all. Yeah. So so basically, the ICJ, however, is fairly influential, especially at the UN level, which is why, of course, we wanted to publish a response to this. We're still working on some final details, but it will soon be up on the WDI website. And its publication will be announced through the WDI newsletter. So do keep an eye out. And for those of you who are not at risk, it would be great if you would feel up to sharing it. It's about 5 pages long, but that's unfortunately how much space it took to analyze this stuff. But the reason I put this picture up is to say that this wasn't just the International Commission of Jurists. OHCHR was involved in signing off on it, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the World Health Organization, and the UNDP, United Nations Development Program. So a lot of the very highly regarded international organizations were involved in the publication of these principles, and much of the uproar has been about Principle 16. I will get to that. Is about decriminalizing consensual sexual conduct. So in our response, WDI Legal has primarily responded to 3 principles: 16, 17, and 18. Principle 16, as you can see, was on consensual sexual conduct, and essentially saying, well, even any prescribed minimum age of consent to sex must be employed in a non-discriminatory manner. But very disturbingly, at the bottom of this page, as you can see in the image, it says sexual conduct involving persons below the domestically prescribed minimum age of consent to sex may be consensual in fact, if not in law. This is extremely disturbing. As someone who used to actually work in the arena of family law and child rights, I can tell you that this gap between the 16 to 18 age range in law has already been exploited. So for example, in India itself, the age of marriage is technically 18. However, the law on statutory rape said 16. So there were a lot of child marriages carried out, even at the time that I was a student and at the time I was practicing, where children would be below the age of 16, and they would just say, okay, we're just getting them married, and but the marital relations would technically not take place, or they would claim that they weren't taking place. And of course, marital rape is also not considered rape. So child marriages and were still carried out. The statutory prohibition didn't apply even then to young girls in forced marriages and in child marriages. So for the ICJ to come out and say something this reckless, to say sexual conduct involving persons below the prescribed age of consent may be consensual, is ridiculous and reckless. Of course, when we started discussing this in the legal committee itself, among members of the legal committee, we discussed the issue that do we really want to say all teenage sexual conduct should be criminalized? And that is a concern. Yes, there may well be teenagers who wish to engage in sexual intercourse. But the way to deal with that is to make it very clear that we're talking about a particular group, especially those of similar age, without a marital context, in cultures where there is some kind of conversation about sex during teen years. If they did want to make an exception to the prohibition on sex under 18 or under 16, it can vary between countries. The way to go about this should have been to make the exception as narrow and as specific as possible. That's not what the ICJ did, and that's what we're saying in our statement, is that if you were so concerned about teenagers engaging in sex, the fact that you went about it in this way is really troubling. Because, like I said, the fact that statutory rape is mostly defined at 16 in most countries, and the fact that marital age is legalized or marriage is technically legal after 18, there's already a gap. The 16 to 18 gap and whether it's actually criminal in that age has been an issue for child protection people for as long as I've known. It's been a debate in both in women's rights circles and in child protection circles, and lawyers have been trying to find a way around that. And I'm not saying that the situation is perfect, but the way that the ICJ went about this was disturbing. And I'm just going to skip ahead to this. The funny thing is, because of the uproar to this principle, there were several responses from the organizations involved. The International Commission of Jurists, they responded, as well as UNAIDS. And if you can see here, it is, I'm not sure if you can see because this is as large a screenshot as I could take. It says that criminal sanctions are not appropriate against adolescents of similar ages. So that's kind of the fourth line from the bottom. UNAIDS, in their response, were able to make this distinction that the exception should only apply to teenagers of similar ages. And yet, in the published principles, which apparently went through many rounds of review and was endorsed by the OHCHR and by UNAIDS and by the World Drug Council, this specification does not appear. One thing that I do have to say about these principles is that the whole approach is don't criminalize things, don't use criminal sanctions for X, and don't use criminal sanctions for Y, and we need to use criminal law as less as possible. And in the backlash to the principles, as usual, some of the rhetoric has also been about carceral feminism, because apparently now criminalizing conduct is oh so bad. And I think it's important for women in this webinar and for us to also be aware of, well, human rights sounding language. Of course, all of us are very aware of how it's being used to get rights for men pretending to be women. But the idea that criminal law must only be used very sparingly when it comes to drug offenses, when it comes to trafficking, when it comes to prostitution, this is part of that push, is that to say, don't criminalize stuff. Don't criminalize commercial sex. Don't criminalize anything. And it might be a good idea for people to really question, but hang on, what standards are we using? Yes, we used to criminalize a lot of, well, unnecessary stuff many years ago, but that doesn't mean a lot of other conduct should not be criminal and treated as such. Sex traffickers get a maximum of 5 years if they're caught, and we all know how difficult that is. But currently, the ICJ and the entire international infrastructure is going full steam ahead to decriminalizing a lot of problematic conduct. Ironically, all of this conduct is stuff that hurts women. And a lot of women also, of course, support this trend because they're afraid of carceral feminism, and they're afraid of an overcrowding in jails and how most people are being imprisoned for nothing. There are a lot of myths surrounding criminalization, and the fact that all of the international organizations are now going on this rampage of being very, very concerned about what's criminalized should be a red flag, not just in this context, but in many contexts. The second principle that we addressed and that was problematic in the 8th March document is this principle 17, sex work. Again, we are all aware of the current liberal position on prostitution, where they call it sex work, and they say that it must not be criminalized, it must be legalized. And the ICJ has also gotten on this bandwagon, who say, who have said that where there has been sexual conduct for financial or material benefit under fair conditions, without coercion, force, abuse of authority, or fraud, then it should be fine. This is, well, frankly ridiculous, because aside from force and coercion, the most powerful influence in all of our lives is money. So obviously, if you say under fair conditions, what fair conditions? Is the government going to verify if all of these women are completely consensual, if they have other choices? That's not been stated at all. I do think it's important here to mention that the position we've taken is to not just assert the radical feminist position. We've also said, look, if this is what you're arguing, then be able to defend it. You have said fair conditions, you haven't specified it, because we're trying to engage with them on their own terms to say that even by your own logic, this makes no sense, right? Because otherwise they can just say, oh, well, we don't agree with you. So our starting point is not to say, okay, this doesn't exist, or you should just call it prostitution. Our tone and the approach in this letter is, even trying to follow your logic, this does not either make sense, and where you think you've made a very bold statement, you haven't specified what these fair conditions are, and you haven't specified how you're going to safeguard vulnerable women who need money from these kinds of conditions. The third principle that we have addressed is, of course, principle 18, which talks about sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. So the most relevant part of this is the third paragraph, which talks about practices aiming to change or suppress a person's sexual orientation and gender identity, etc. As we all know, this is what they call as conversion therapy, and this is what they try to silence therapists and medical professionals who may try to give gender confused kids an alternative. So within the statement, what we've said is, first of all, this does not apply to LGB, because the second part of this principle says medical care should also be made available, except that LGBT people aren't asking for medical care to be who they are. They're just asking to, well, be left alone and to have their relationships legally recognized. So, well, as well known, they lump it all into one. And they've tried to say that this is an issue of SOGI, sexual orientation and gender identity, when in fact it's just an issue that is relevant to gender identity. So the response on that basis has just been, you're, again, post-steaming, you are deliberately lumping a concern or an interest that is unique to one group, and you're asserting that sexual orientation also uses that. Minorities in sexual orientation also need that, such as medical procedures to be proud of their identity, which is not a thing that LGBT people ask for. So finally, yes, like I had already presented this earlier, the UNAIDS report, UNAIDS has responded to the backlash against the 8th March principles. The ICJ itself, just about a month after they released the first set of principles, they came and said, oh, we're not against criminalizing sexual conduct between we're not decriminalizing all forms of sex, except our entire approach there has been, if you were going to talk about teenagers, you should have been very specific that it's between similar ages. And your principles should state the conditions under which those children will be protected. So, of course, coercion can also exist between a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old, right? So when you say similar ages, what age range are we talking about? Are we talking about the exact same year? And if you do want to say that criminal law should not apply, are you going to at least put in place some kind of process for verification that teenagers who engage in sexual conduct are doing so fully consensually? All of this is the responsibility of an organization like this that puts out these principles, and yet that they have completely abdicated. So we will release the final version of the statement very soon. And we're looking forward to hopefully having it shared, as well as there is a letter that Joe has already talked about, the statement in support of Reem Al-Salem. The legal committee is also working on another statement where we've particularly addressed AWAD's stupidity, because the current statement being circulated for signatures is a generic statement and of support for Reem's work, but we are also trying to respond specifically to AWID because it's time that, well, we took the fight to them basically, and we can't just stay back and say, okay, well, she's doing her job, leave her alone, but also that, well, they're being insane. So yeah, that's another thing that we've been working on, but this, the WDI Legal's response to the 8th March principles will soon be made available. Some people ask how they can support resisting these principles. Like we said, the statement itself will be published on the website, but we are also discussing whether we can, say, run a couple of open events, because one thing that we've decided, well, we kind of agreed on with the legal committee, is that at least some of us, we have to be open and we have to put our faces and names out there to resist the UN. So we're thinking of other ways to push this statement and some of our other submissions up. Like I said, there will also be a response to AWID. We're also working on responding to the ICC, is currently fudging the definition of gender in the court. So yeah, we, as much as the people here can advertise, or if you have any ideas to, again, elevate our response, because the NGO community is so strong and they mostly just ignore us. So that's anything that anybody can do to help. And of course, if there are lawyers in the crowd who are interested, just reach out to us at legal@womensdeclaration.com, and we'll be happy to have them also on board.
We've just got our final panelist, who's Dalio. Yeah. Quite a lot of people will have seen the campaign that you've been working on with Amy.
I have to, though, first say that this was Amy Mangano's, I don't think she's made it today, brainchild. And she's doing all of the posters, we're calling them billboards. And I'll explain that in a minute. She's doing all of the work and I'm sort of the facilitating it through her. So, and the goal of this initiative, this campaign, is very clearly, first and foremost, to put our voices out there, to give a platform, to say, I signed the declaration and this is why. And then, of course, secondarily, we hope that, it will encourage other women and men to also sign the declaration. That would probably be another campaign, sign the declaration. But so that's the first motive of it, or rather objective. And that's our primary objective, to really give voice and visibility. So we've got a really nice response right now. We're still processing a few of the billboards that have been sent to us. And I want to also say I've been tagging on Twitter, and I'll show the Twitter feed in a moment. The meme, I guess it's called, Be the Billboard. I very deliberately used that to extend what Posey Parker started, which was a meme that she created. And I want to give her credit for that, because I think it's also important to have a community perspective in the movement, and to share these kinds of tools, if you will. Memes are tools in social media. And the other one is what I heard Kara Dansky use quite often is, if we can be heard, we will win. Again, that's, and I need to acknowledge Kara for that. I don't know if it was from her specifically. It doesn't matter. She was the person who made that meme known. And I think both of those really speak to what this campaign is about. To get the word out there, and to let women have a voice, just take a step in a direction of courage, because isn't that what a lot of us feel on some level, that our voices aren't heard? We're afraid, and rightly so, to say something. And there is a little bit of a safety barrier in this campaign, because you can put a photograph or not of yourself, and you put your statement, and most people put their names, but you don't have to. Social media and the web, there is some safety in it, because it's not, that physical interaction that we have with people. That I know for me, it makes a difference. So that's the sort of the background of it. Amy has asked me, we've been getting everybody's just been doing wonderful things. We've gotten some wonderful photos of women with their babies. They're cute. And many women have just sent a statement without a photograph. If you do that, that's wonderful. We want your statement. If you don't want any kind of photograph, we understand, why you don't want to have your own photo with it. But if you'd like to send some kind of image, that would be great. That would help Amy out. If not, we'll just put your statement up there. We don't need to have an image on all of them. That's not necessary. I also want to reiterate, and I'll keep doing this again. We're an international organization, and we default to the English language, but we've gotten 2 so far, foreign language, Spanish and German. And we really want to have a representation from as many languages as possible. It can, or it doesn't need to be translated. We realize that you're speaking to a particular linguistic community. That's wonderful. I think it's vital that we, as an international organization, that we welcome other countries through their culture, and language is a really big part of culture. So let me share my screen. I think I can, and I'll just scroll really quickly through the Twitter feed that has the latest billboards on it. So this is our Twitter feed, and we're actually gaining, every week we gain more and more followers. So let's go right to one of the ones. Here we are. So this is a stock photo. And what I meant by sending us a photo or some kind of an image, that it takes Amy time to find an appropriate image. So if you don't care about an image, we're just going to put your text up there. That's fine. And we also ask if you could keep your text to 25 words, particularly if you have a photo. If you don't, make it up to 50, but we can't, it's a billboard poster. We can't really put, long things on them, a long, a paragraph or so. So 50, 60 words, if you can manage that, fine. I can also edit. Here's Gunda in German, auf Deutsch, and then she did in English. Sabine and Marie from New Zealand. This one is great. I signed the declaration because defending lesbian and all women's rights is the most important fight of our time. We're fighting for the future, for future generations of lesbians, women, and girls. I think I say Ghislaine, I'm not sure. Excuse me if that's incorrect. I signed the declaration to protect women's diminishing rights to their own private spaces. Nancy, I signed the declaration because the sisters in the past worked hard to get their rights. Their fight cannot be wasted. There's Emma. Now more than ever, we need to ensure that female dignity, equality, and rights are protected. Having a global network of women from all cultures and political persuasions is a beautiful and powerful thing. That's why I signed. I declare that I signed the declaration because not enough is being done globally to uphold and enforce the rights of women, from Cheryl in New Zealand. And we have had, I am really happy to say, we have had a couple of guys. And here's Dennis. I signed the declaration because we've lost Voting Rights Act of 1965 and Roe versus Wade. The transgender ideology is a frontal attack on women's rights. Here's one of the baby ones. One of the mom and babies. I signed the declaration because the dismantling of sex-based rights is resulting in female erasure, silencing, and violence against women and girls. Lauren in San Diego, USA.